Hey everyone, welcome back to We Are Chattin, your Penn State Brandywine podcast. We're your hosts, Ava Clemens.
And Natalie DeMario.
And today we are chatting with Dr. Joshua Phillips.
Dr. Phillips is a teaching professor of communications, art, and sciences here at Penn State Brandywine and an accomplished scholar with numerous publications, conference awards, and a book publication.
Dr. Phillips, welcome to We Are Chattin.
Thank you, ladies.
Welcome on.
Yeah, happy to have you.
Yeah.
All right, to get started, we're going to start at the top. And we understand that you received a PhD in speech communication from Southern Illinois University, as well as an MA and a BAA from Central Michigan University. How did that lead you to becoming a professor here at Penn State Brandywine?
Okay, so we'll tell the shorter story. I know I've looked up some of the other questions you're going to ask me.
Yeah.
So they'll fill in some details. But once I finished my PhD at Southern Illinois University, I knew I wanted to be back in Philadelphia. So between my undergraduate, which I finished in 2006, and then going to grad school, I took a year off. And there was an organization called Mission Year, which kind of like domestic Peace Corps, right? Like Peace Corps in the U.S. kind of thing. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I graduated undergrad. I had some friends who basically took a year off, did this volunteer thing. I signed up for this program, and they just put you somewhere in the United States. I got put into Camden, New Jersey. And I didn't even know what Camden, New Jersey was. I was from Illinois, from the Midwest. So I literally flew out to Philadelphia with a backpack, moved into a house. There were 6 of us total in this house, living in Camden, New Jersey. They connect you with a church just so you have a community to kind of help you through like immediate needs. And then you get, you kind of tour the community and you find someplace to volunteer. And I ended up working at a homeless shelter and doing after school programs. So that was my day from August of 2006 until August of 2007. It kind of works on a school schedule because there's a lot of college students who go and do this. So once I left in 2007 to go back for my master's degree at Central Michigan and then eventually finish my PhD at Southern Illinois University, once I was finishing that up in 2014, 2015, I knew I just wanted to be back in the Philadelphia area because I loved like the Camden, New Jersey vibe. I loved the Philly vibe. And so I was looking for a lot of jobs in this area specifically. There were some jobs all over the U.S. I kind of put I applied for them just in case. But I was really fortunate that Brandywine liked what they saw in my CV. And in 2015, August 2015, I was able to pack up my truck and my dog and a U-Haul, and I drove from Southern Illinois.
Wow.
Gosh, it was a very long drive. I actually drove to Fredericksburg, Maryland first because my sister was there.
Wow.
So I drove there, and then it's like a 2-hour drive up here. She helped me move into the house that I bought when I first moved out here. So that's how I ended up back kind of in the Philadelphia area, in the Penn State system. Very grateful that I've been here into my 11th year now. It's a wonderful place, and I hope to be here for many, many more years.
Wow.
Yeah. It's interesting that you made that long haul from Midwest to the Northeast.
Yeah, how far is that drive?
Yeah.
Well, when you're, when there's a giant U-Haul in the back of your truck, it was, probably between like 14 to 16 hours with all the stops.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's a drive.
And you had a dog
That's
to
a
keep you
drive.
company?
I had a dog. This is an older dog who's no longer with us. I have a new dog now, but yes, this was a big 80-pound chocolate lab I had in my truck.
I love labs.
Yeah.
They're my
God.
favorite. They're my
Actually,
favorite.
so
Yeah.
I used to have a Toyota Tacoma, which is a relatively small truck. I actually took the passenger seat out of the truck so the dog had all that space.
Wait,
Wow.
yeah.
He was living life in that.
Yeah, he was
passenger
living
seat.
life in just on the floor of the passenger side of the
Wow,
truck.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Driving cross country.
It's the way to do it. It's the way to do it. So to kind of backtrack a little bit, what kind of first drew you to studying communications, and how did you, evolve that and kind of evolve it in your focus on rhetoric and interpersonal communications?
So, some of the stuff I'll tell my students, which is really, the reason that I also got into it, so I'm not lying to any students of mine. But I like the idea that we live in stories. We are mimicking the stories that we consume as younger people. We are sort of, little boys, little girls are acting out, these sort of heroic Disney stories that they see. The only way that I kind of know how to act in the world or what I'm supposed to say or how I'm supposed to communicate with other people is based off mimicking other people I've seen act in certain ways. And so, yeah, I like this idea that, you are born into a world that already exists. How did that world come to be? And it's the sort of telling and retelling of stories over centuries, over millennia. So some of the stuff I'll do in my class with students is we'll look at some of the movies that are contemporary movies, that are new movies, and we'll talk about some of the ways in which they are similar to stories we've told in the past. So whether they're Shakespearean, whether they're influenced by Greek plays, Greek tragedies, but we live in this world, and these stories that we keep telling ourselves are stories that go back throughout human history. And so I just get really interested in sort of the origin of these stories, the transformation of these stories, how these stories have evolved over time, and then with regard to this idea of rhetoric, the definition I use in my classrooms is the study of messages and their persuasiveness. So as we consume things, text, media, books, political speeches, movies, etc., as we consume, they persuade us to act and behave differently. And so these stories act upon us, and then we act out based on how they persuade us. And so I just get really interested in the whole world that I live in is stories. The ways in which people behave is based on the stories they've consumed. The language that we use is based, we're mimicking, you watch movies and actors and actresses or musicians kind of put new lyrics, new words into their songs, and then we sort of, gravitate toward this new slang that's being used generation to generation. So I'm just really interested in how culture is created through these stories that have existed for a very, very long time.
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of like encapsulates communication to arts and science too, because you're combining both arts and the science behind it, which is also pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, it's fun to connect it back to the movies and the books that we read in your classes too. I remember going back to when me and Ava were in your 203, was it?
And a
I think
personal
Black Swan is probably one of my
Oh my
favorite movies
gosh,
now.
great movie.
Love it. Love it.
Great movie.
So good.
Good.
It's a good one.
Yeah, that was great. So we also understand that you took part in an ethnographic research study and wrote a book on it. So can you tell us about your research process and the book?
Yeah. So the book that you are referring to is this book on homelessness, which was my PhD dissertation. So my PhD dissertation on homelessness, I'd been either working or volunteering in homeless shelters throughout most of my 20s. And by the time I got to my dissertation, the final stage of one's PhD, I was talking with some advisors, and they said, you're kind of around this topic, this community for years, and you've never written about it formally. You've never done any research around it. Why don't you pick that as your dissertation topic? And so I ended up writing my dissertation on homelessness. The ethnographic part of it was I was already working in homeless shelters. I kind of knew the community of individuals who were homeless in Southern Illinois. I kind of knew where they slept at night or where they frequented. So I was able to go into those spaces. I did a lot of interviews with individuals who were homeless, trying to figure out, why they were homeless, what are some of the things they're trying to do to get out of homelessness, sort of what are their long-term goals with regard to, where they see themselves, hopefully in, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And once that dissertation was done, I kind of took a gamble with a publisher that I somewhat knew because I had just done a chapter for an edited book with this publisher. I just sent them my entire dissertation, which everyone advises you against. You're supposed to take your dissertation and splice it up and make a bunch of journal articles out of it. And I said, I like this as a book. I think it works better as a book as opposed to, 4 or 5 25-page separate papers. And I just sent it to the publisher, and I said, look, I know that this isn't complete yet for a book because it's written as a dissertation, which is a little bit more academic, a little bit more wonky. But do you think that this writing and this topic are good enough where if you work with me and give me some information for the edits, that you would take the book and publish it, after kind of, me and the publisher working on it back and forth, making edits for the next year. And to my surprise, the publisher was like, this is great. Let's work on it. So I stripped away probably like 25% of my dissertation. Then I had to kind of backfill with some new information to kind of make it a little bit more readable. And that was like a year and a half long process, and got that book published. But the big thing was just, I wanted to kind of go into the community I was already kind of in with regard to homelessness and talk to these individuals, get their stories, and see if we can kind of get it onto paper to kind of figure out some interesting academic and policy insights with regard to how what homelessness looks like on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And through working closely with homeless and, women's shelters, what have those experiences taught you that, you couldn't learn in the classroom?
Talking to the people.
Yeah.
So make sure that we are making connections with the people for whom we are trying to create some sort of policy. So this gets into larger sort of government policy questions, which is not necessarily academic, but closely related in some regards. My frustration, this kind of comes out in the first chapter of my book, is I dislike that there are a lot of government people, politicians, policymakers who are making decisions about, let's say, homelessness and welfare, and they're not even in conversation with the people who are homeless or the people who are receiving welfare. So to get a good idea of how the system works, if the system's being beneficial, I can create all the policies I want around homelessness, around welfare policies. But to know whether or not that model is going to work for somebody who is actually homeless, I need to go and talk to them with regard to the system, because the feedback I was getting from people who are homeless, that I wrote up in the book, was they would say oh, we have all these programs, but for them it's the programs weren't working. They were these programs don't really kind of coordinate with the life that I'm living. It's not really feasible. You have all these politicians who have a utopian idea of how the system's gonna work perfectly, but then you implement the system and the system doesn't work for the people on the ground. And so that's what I'm always really interested in when it comes to my research, is talking to the people for whom the research is about or who the research is going to be for, and figuring out, making sure that the system works for them, as opposed to just a politician or academic kind of making up a system and then realizing it doesn't work for the people who are supposed beneficiaries of that system.
Yeah, I think there's two things that I wanted to point out from this last conversation. One being with your dissertation and, not doing the traditional route of turning this into a journal article and taking that extra step to, let's see if I can get this turned into a book. I feel like that's a really great piece of advice, to kind of step outside of the box or step outside of the comfort zone. And also just, bringing awareness to talking to people that these sort of policies are directly affecting, I think is something that we often look over, and we think, looking at the masses or how this might affect people, but really, getting to talk to each person individually, even if it's one or two people, definitely makes a difference.
Yeah, and I think the reason why the book was so well received is because you actually immersed yourself in that life. You talked to these people, you saw what it was like to live like them, and I think, that kind of carries on to making more educated decisions around how we can help them,
Yeah, and so to kind of go off of that, given your work and your research on areas of media, race, and social justice, how do you navigate teaching sensitive topics in the classroom?
My approach, I guess it might not be the most, I don't know how to put this. It might not be the most well received by some of my colleagues, perhaps, in the broader university world. But my approach is that students are adults. I try not to, beat around the bush too much or offer too many, qualifiers. Hey, everybody, this might upset you, or trigger warnings. I tell students hey, this is a difficult topic, but it's a real topic in the world, and we're going to kind of dive into it. So I think my students, you two included, might say that I'm pretty straightforward and blunt when it comes to addressing issues. Students who are in college, they are adults. I'm not insensitive to some of these issues, but I do think that if we are going to have hard conversations about difficult issues, if we're going to have hard conversations, if we really want to find solutions to problems with regard to difficult problems, then we just need to be blunt about the reality of them. And if we're not blunt about the reality, if we sanitize them too much, I don't think people fully understand the gravity of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think I'm just pretty straightforward. I don't have a lot of time to qualify remarks. I don't have a lot of time to beat around the bush. I mostly put things in front of students and say, we are adults. We are going to handle this. This is what we are here for. if we want to find solutions, then we have to be very honest about what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, we come here to college to learn, and
Yeah.
to really truly learn, you can't really you can't sugarcoat things. You
Yeah.
have to say it how it is,
Yeah, and I think that's like a good approach too.
Yeah.
Especially just like the transition from being in high school to college is kind of like those conversations that might be uncomfortable or kind of censored. And then, if they're not exposed in college, then what happens when you get into the real world and someone brings that up? You're not
be a
sure how to.
shock.
Yeah,
That's
like,
what
you
it's
don't know
going to
how-
be. It's going to be a shock to the system.
No navigation.
Exactly. So to kind of continue down the path of your teaching journey, what is one moment that you've had while teaching that made you think, yes, this is why I love doing what I do?
This has been my sort of why I teach story for a very long time.
I'm excited.
Ava's dying to know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So when I started grad school, I didn't know I didn't know how you became a college professor. I wasn't really interested in becoming a college professor. I went to grad school because some people in the department said, you're pretty good at this academic stuff. I've always been good at academics. You're good at this. Like, if you want to go to grad school, we'll fund you. We'll give you an assistantship. You're going to teach some classes on the side. And I knew you had to teach. I taught all throughout grad school as an instructor, and that pays for your grad school, and you get a little stipend. And so I did that, but I wasn't really interested in the teaching stuff as much as I was in like the research stuff. I want to read books. I literally, like, if someone just paid me money to stay home all day and read books and do some, that'd be great.
Same.
So that's what I did. So 2 years of master's degree, and then I got to maybe my second year of my PhD. So I'd been doing this sort of teaching and grad school stuff for like 4 years. Let's just say in the fourth year about. I was teaching a class, and it was a intercultural class, and I've had the same policy as you can both attest to. I have 3 absences, and then after that, you're getting points taken away, right? I don't care why people are absent. I don't collect doctor's notes. I don't care. Like, I care about my students, but I don't care why it is you're absent. Like, you can just manage them how you want. Some people want to, go to University Park for a football game, tailgate on Friday night. Fine, leave class early. I don't care. Some people are sick, so like save your absences for that. So I just give 3 absences. So I had this class, my fourth year of grad school that I'm teaching, and the second week on like a Wednesday, so it's already like, this is like the 5th day of class now. This girl walks into the class late. She walks across the front of the class in front of me while I'm teaching.
Oh, that's the worst.
We're like, she's like 5-10 minutes late, and she's just walking very confidently, doesn't care, nobody else exists. It's a class of like 30 students.
Okay.
She walks, and then she sits kind of in the front row corner over to my side, right? So I'm like, okay, right? And after class, she comes up and she's just like, hey, like, I've been enrolled in the class. I missed the first week and a half of class. Like, what do I need to do? Just like not apologetic, anything. And I look at her, and her name's Katrina. Mm-hmm. And I was like, Katrina, I was like, okay, you've been on the roster since day one. You've missed 4 classes. So now you have, your 25 points you're going to lose 25 points on your attendance thing. You've already used all your absences, et cetera. And this is after class. Nobody else is in the classroom. And she's like going off on me. I haven't been here yet. How dare you? Like, this is so unfair. Like, whatever. The first day doesn't count. It's a syllabus day. And I was like, no, like, you've been on the roster. I start counting day 1 in the story. Like, and I'm very firm. And so the rest of the semester, she's kind of she comes in, she sits in her seat in the corner with her big jacket on and backpack on and whatever, like barely engaging. And she's like sucking her teeth. Like, if you all know, like, just every time I'll like eye rolling and making all these tick sound, like when I say, like, the whole semester. She gets to her final project, and she's like scraping along. She's kind of, she's doing okay on the assignments, scraping along. She gets to her final project, and her final project in this intercultural class, she does an analysis of Chris Rock had this movie called Good Hair, about like the hair industry specifically for Black women. So Katrina and she like just like knocks it out of the park. Like, it's great. Like, paper's great, her presentation's great. After that presentation, she comes to my office hours, and she's like, thanks for the semester. And then like a day or 2 later, after the semester was over, she sent me this long email, and I still have the email. I have the email, I printed it out, and it just says like, basically says like, I know I was a nightmare for you, but I want you to know, like, over the course of the semester, like, you really changed my mind, and I figured out why all these things are important, and these things are great. And I think she, like, at the end, she signed it, like, one day when I become president, I'll make sure to, like, thank you in my inauguration address, something like that, right?
I got
But
it.
it's just like very long,
Love it.
like
Yeah.
you were strict with me, like you didn't let me get away with like nonsense. Like you're the first person to kind of quote unquote like put me in my place and tell me like the world doesn't evolve around me. And because of that, like I got the organization that I needed, I got the boundaries that I needed to like really do great on this final project. I realized that I'm much better at academics than she thought she was. And so yeah, like somebody just kind of stood up to her, for lack of a better word, and said like you're not going to get away with this. And then because of that, she realized like, oh, like if I don't have to be mean to people to get my way. Like if I can do really hard work and like I can actually produce something really, really great. And she did. And yeah, every couple of years, like I'll get an email from her or something. But that was the moment I was like, gosh, like I love this teaching thing.
Wow.
Like you really can like make a
great.
difference. Sometimes with most students, it doesn't take a semester. It takes like 2 or 3 years. Like you'll see somebody their freshman year and they're kind of, wayward. But then by the time they're like a junior, it's like, wow, you got your act together. Like you're involved in student organizations. You're getting an internship. You've come out of your shell. And so, yeah, I think that moment with Katrina about 4 years in, I was like, I think I want to do this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Katrina, if you're listening, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
For all that you've done. Thank you.
Give us a great professor.
Yeah.
All right, so to kind of shift gears away from teaching, when you're not teaching, you spend time as an assistant wrestling coach for a local high school. So can you tell us about how you got that role and what it looks like?
I've been wrestling a very long time, since I was
fun.
12.
Wow.
Wrestled through a high school, wrestled for 2 years in college. And then when I got here when I got to Penn State Brandywine in 2015, the first thing I did is that there's a Starbucks. I don't know if the Starbucks is it's across the street now in Media, but there used to be a Starbucks where the brand new Wawa station is on a corner in Media.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still there.
Well, and the Starbucks is now moved across the street because like the Wawa took over like the big parking lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. I mean,
So whatever, there's a Starbucks there. So I didn't have internet at my house. I had nothing at my house. So I would go to the Starbucks a lot in Media, and I would sit there and I would like prep. So this is like August 1st. I was like, I gotta prep all my stuff. I gotta get online. I gotta get ready for this semester to start. I just moved to this area. Like semester starts in 3 weeks. Like I gotta get my stuff in order. So I go to Starbucks and do this kind of stuff. One of the first thing I did before I was like getting all my academic stuff in order, I was like, I gotta find out what high school is close to my house because I gotta get over there and start coaching. So I Google mapped my house, and the closest high school was Strathaven High School.
okay.
So I get on their website and I email the head coach, and his name's Tony. And I emailed and said, Tony, I was like, this is who I am. I just moved to the area. I'm like, can I just come in and I want to like help volunteer. I don't know if you're doing any preseason stuff or whatever. And the wrestling world is pretty small. And so it's pretty easy for people to kind of look you up online to see like if you're legit or not. So he looks up my stuff and he looks up my stats and everything. And he's like, okay, like you're a legit person. You've had some accomplishments in the sport. He's like, yes. He's like, I just got the head coaching job. He's like, please come in and help me out. Because he was like 25. He got it really young.
Wow.
And I was like 30. So he's like, he's like, I'm 25. I don't really, like, I come in and help like with the practices. So I was doing preseason. By the time season started in November, he said, like, I need assistant coaches. He's like, if you want to be an assistant coach, he's like, you can get paid. And I was just planning on being a volunteer, and I was like, I don't know if I don't have the time.
Yeah.
But eventually, he's like, just come whenever you can. He's like, you don't have to be here all the time. He's like, be the assistant coach. I'll pay you money. So him and I coached at Strathaven for a decade, and then last two seasons ago, I moved away from that area, and now I live a little bit further south. And there was a head coaching job opened up at Westtown School, which is a private school over in Westchester. They had a job opening, and so I was like, this is like 10 minutes closer to my house. This is 10 minutes from my house. Strathaven was like 35 minutes from my house. And with all the community and everything, I just ended up at Westtown. So for me, the big thing is like why I wanted to do that and it's like since I've started wrestling, like I've been good at it. I've had some accomplishments in it. I tell people, like, when I'm at work doing academic stuff, sometimes academics kind of run into imposter syndrome. They're like, I'm not smart enough to do this. I don't know what I'm doing. Everything's chaotic. So when things are really stressful at work, especially in those early years of being a professor, when I'm like 30 years old, just starting off here at Brandywine, going, like when I feel like I have an 8-hour day and I have no idea what I'm doing on campus, I can go to the wrestling room and it's like, I know how to coach. I know how to wrestle. I know how to coach. I'm not freaking out about it. I'm not worried if I'm doing the right thing or saying the right thing. It's like, I know how to get into a wrestling room and just roll with the kids for like 2 hours and teach them moves. Like wrestling and the wrestling mat was always a space where I always just felt comfortable, like I knew what I was doing. For those times when academics is overwhelming and I feel like I'm tearing my hair out trying to figure out what the correct answer is, or like, you're doing writing. It's like, I can't write this. I'm trying to write a page or two and it's like, none of this is making sense, or I'm trying to get a lecture together. And I was like, are my students even, like, did they get value out of this? Did what I say for the last hour, did it make any sense to them? Going into the wrestling room, it's like a comfort zone.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to see that comparison from professor to student too, because like a lot of students, they experience imposter syndrome in the classroom learning, So to be able to go to their club after class or go to their sport after class and kind of like unwind and do their thing, that's what it's all about. So,
yeah, I feel like it helps like rebuild confidence too.
Yeah,
Like, if I maybe didn't understand this in class today, I know what I'm doing here. Like I can get that done. And also just like staying connected with something that's from your childhood, I feel like is so important too as you get older.
Yep, absolutely. So what is something that you hope students take away from your classes, sort of beyond just what like the materials and the basic kind of?
I do ask students at the end of the semester, I'm like, I hope that you have gotten something out of this class that you can keep taking with you, that you've learned. I know that a lot of my college classes, sometimes you kind of take the final exam and then you forget everything. I think the big thing that I try to do, and I started doing this maybe 7-8 years ago, I now kind of name drop a lot of books in my classes, even if we're not reading them.
I can confirm.
As you probably
I can
have
confirm.
noticed.
You can clock that.
Yeah.
And so it was like 7 or 8 years ago, I realized that a lot of my students were just not familiar with, let's say, just, canonical text or artwork or music or whatever. I'm like, I feel like you just know this, like in the liberal arts. Like, you should just know that, Ernest Hemingway was an author that existed. Like, I don't expect that you have read everything of his or maybe anything of his. You should just like know the name and a little bit of information about him. So I started like name dropping a lot of authors, books, musical pieces, artwork, as examples in my syllabus and in my lectures. And what I hope students get out of my class now is that every once in a while, like a student shows up to my door and they're like, hey, like a month ago, you mentioned this guy named Kafka in class and we did like a quick PowerPoint to explain something. Can I just like, who is he? Can I like go to the library and check out a book of it? Like, so that kind of conversation where if you just kind of name drop enough, knowing that every once in a while a student's going to go to the library and pick up a book, not a book that I assigned, but just a book that they kind of overheard in class once because they're like, I think that might be interesting for me to kind of go down that rabbit hole. That's what I hope that, that's where I hope a lot of my students get to. They get to that place at the end of the semester. Obviously, I can't teach a lot. Like, I can't teach everything during a semester, during one class. You can only read so many books during one class. But if you can just kind of spark a little bit of interest and say, okay, after the class, I hope students kind of keep going down this rabbit hole and they find some of these books interesting or they, something resonated in a lecture or an author or whatever, and they go and check out a book from a library. That's where I hope students, I hope students kind of get to that place at the end of my classes.
Yeah, and to kind of connect to that, you do you assign an assignment in the beginning of a lot of your classes called the 3 list of 10.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you kind of talk about how that can, how that pertains to what you're talking about and explaining?
Sure. So in 2020, spring of 2020, myself and Professor Chris O'Lear over in the business department, we shared the Excellent in Teaching Awards. So we both won the Excellent in Teaching Awards. And if you win that, I don't know if they still do it, you win it in the spring, and then in the fall for convocation for the incoming freshman class, you get to give the convocation speech. It's like a 10-minute speech. So it's during COVID. And so I have to give this speech like on Zoom is weird. Usually, it's like in front of the entire freshman class in the auditorium, but it's COVID time. And so while I'm writing up the speech, I'm like, what do I want freshmen to do that I don't think freshmen are doing? And one thing that I really want freshman students moving into university to do more often than maybe they're doing now is take some time to sit down and plan the next 4 years. Like, where do you want to be in 4 years? And if you just take that time to say, like, this is the kind of job I want, this is the kind of education I want, this is where I want to live, this is the kind of salary I'm looking at, then you can kind of take the time to kind of plan, like, where you need to be, like, month to month, year to year throughout your 4 years of college. I think a lot of people just kind of say, well, at the end of 4 years, like, I'll figure it out by the time I'm done with college. And I'm like, you should probably figure it out sooner so you can be more intentional in your decision making. So with the 3 list of 10 assignments, so with the convocation speech, I said like 50-50-50 because there's 48 months in 4 years, which is about a college education. It's like, let's round it up to 50. So in my convocation speech, I was like, for liberal arts degrees, you should make a list of 50 like classical canonical books that you want to read, a list of 50 pieces of like classical music that you just want to be familiar with, and 50 pieces of sort of traditional artwork that you want to be familiar with. And then if you just kind of study one of those things from each list per month by the time you get to graduation after 48 months, 50 months, you've consumed a lot, like you've got a lot of good information there. So in my class, I have my freshman students do 3 list of 10. And I'm like, if you could just kind of plan it out, like by the time you're done with like what 10 books have you always thought about reading? And a lot of the common ones are like The Great Gatsby or Pride and Prejudice, or, some of the artwork will be like, I want to learn, I want to, like, I've heard the name Van Gogh or like Da Vinci, like The Last Supper. Stuff that now, it seems kind of very familiar, but, sometimes I forget, like, when you're 18, these things aren't necessarily familiar. And so just kind of making students be very intentional with what 10 books do you definitely want to read, and let's plan out how to read. You read 1 book a month, right? What 10 pieces of artwork you want to study? What 10 pieces of music do you want to just be familiar with, just to be a well-rounded kind of liberal arts graduate? I think that just helps students to be very, very intentional with what they're studying, what they're doing in their leisure time, as opposed to just assuming you're going to come into college and in 4 years you're all just going to kind of have this knowledge by osmosis just from being in the environment. I just try to tell my students, let's be a little bit more intentional, like write it down. And when you write something down, it feels a little bit more real. And now you feel like you need to go to the library and check out Jane Austen.
Yeah, I can attest to this. I did buy War and Peace.
It worked.
It
worked. The assignment worked.
After my first class with Dr. Phillips, I became very interested in War and Peace.
Right.
Did you read it?
I attempted.
Okay.
It's really difficult. There is a mini series.
There's a mini series on the BBC that I would highly recommend.
A lot easier to understand.
Yeah, it's quite the book.
Yeah, it is.
That's
from
what I understand.
It's on my bucket list. Like I am going to complete it one day.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm not going to lose sight of that.
No, you will.
But the class did inspire me. All right. Final question. What advice would you give to students who are still unsure of what path they want to take in college, and how did you navigate those challenges yourself?
The big thing, go to your professor's office hours. I can't stress, I know it sounds, trite. Go to their office hours. If you don't know what you want to do, go talk to professors and say, what can I do with a major, what can I do with, a major from your department? And maybe they tell you and you're like, I don't like that idea. So you go to a different, you don't have to just go to your individual professor's office hours. Like you can go to any professor's office hours. If you're not, taking an econ class right now, go talk to an econ professor. All professors on this campus, they have office hours. Go and talk to people about what you can do with the major, what the major can do for you, like what are your long-term goals. You're 18, you're not supposed to know what all these degrees can do for you. So go talk to the people who can. So that's the biggest piece of advice I have is go utilize office hours, talk to the people who have been doing this, who have been mentoring students, advising students, get into those office hours, ask lots of questions. Then you're going to figure stuff out. You can't just sit in your classes and be like, I'll figure out a major one day. Go to office hours. Professors are here all the time.
Yeah, I'd agree. And even if it's just like introducing yourself and just stopping by and saying hello, it shows your character, and it shows that you're here to learn, and you're here to, build that relationship with people. So it's great.
And they're here to help too.
Exactly. All right, so we're going to switch it up a little bit, head into a segment we like to call Rapid Chattin', where we fire off some fun rapid-fire questions. You ready?
I am.
You sure? Okay. All right.
And
Question 1. Who is your favorite character from The Great Gatsby?
fantastic. So I actually thought about this a lot. So you gave me the questions ahead of time.
Okay.
And I'm gonna qualify this with metaphorically because a lot of people say all the characters in Great Gatsby have these major flaws. Jay Gatsby. I'm going with Jay Gatsby.
Yeah, I kind of figured.
And here's the thing, like,
That's what you said.
Yeah.
here's the thing. I get the flaws, and maybe he was doing some, illegal activities to gain his wealth, and there's some problems with him, like being a little too pie in the sky with Daisy and everything else. But Jay he's driven. He has goals. He accomplishes goals. He is disciplined. I mean, the idea of like looking out, metaphorically at the green light and just like staying the course on your hopes and your dreams, I think is such an important lesson for people to have. You don't have to just kind of give up on everything. So, I mean, be more like Jay Gatsby. Go after your goals.
Got it.
Ava, what would your favorite character be? I'm curious.
The green light.
I was going to say the same thing. The green light.
So I could be a metaphor.
Yeah, no, that's the right answer. Aside from Jay Gatsby, obviously.
Yeah, right. There's two right answers.
Exactly.
If you were stranded on a desert island, what celebrity would you call for help?
I went through the list. I know some people are going to give me heat for this, but I was like, I think this is a good answer. I'm going with Joe Rogan. I don't,
Okay.
And here's the thing.
All right.
And people are going to be like, oh, the Joe. I don't really listen to the podcast that much until somebody sends, like, there's somebody interesting on here. I don't listen to podcasts a lot, period. I have too much going on. But here's the thing. He obviously, you're going to have a fun time, Joe Rogan, right? You have a good conversation. But like he knows all the outdoor stuff. Like I want somebody who is healthy and fit and can navigate the outdoor world. If we're gonna be on that island for a while, like we need to start fires and catch animals to eat. And might as well do it with the celebrity who is motivated and has those skills. And along the way, you're gonna have some fun conversations.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a really good take.
I was gonna put money on this that you were gonna say someone from like the School of Athens painting. I for sure thought he was gonna say someone from that painting.
Well, I didn't know dead or alive was an option. I thought it had to be a live
Well,
celebrity.
Sorry,
yeah,
I should have
guess it
made that
would've.
more. Yeah.
Wait, I did a paper on the School of Athens painting.
Yeah.
For my class?
Yes, I did. My rhetorical analysis of a painting.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Question 3. Who would you have play you in a biopic of your life?
Okay, so I don't know much. I do know that both Ryan Reynolds and Chris Pratt, people say that I look like them.
I don't
Which
know.
I don't know.
I think
So I would assume probably one of them. I will go with. Chris Pratt seems to be kind of on the up. Ryan Reynolds might have. I don't know. I don't know if he's still around. I know he had like the Deadpool thing.
I'm not sure.
I don't know. I don't really watch any of his movies.
Yeah.
Not
So
too
yeah,
sure.
probably one of them.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right. That's a
Good
good one.
pick.
Yeah.
All right, and final question. What is one book that you would love to read again for the first time?
Anna Karenina, without hesitation. I've mentioned this a lot to many people. Anna Karenina is my favorite book of all time. War and Peace is the greatest novel. There can be a distinction, but Anna Karenina. It's my favorite book. I would love to be able to read it again for the first time. There's so many emotional ups and downs. There's something about everybody kind of knows the ending, even if you haven't read the book. It's that popular of a book and sad of an ending. But being able to kind of go like the subplot. I mean, it's a 1,000-page book, so there's tons of up and downs. So yeah, being able to turn the page and kind of find those surprises again with some of the sub characters. Would be really fantastic. I do plan on reading. It's on my reading list for this year, so I'm going to reread it again this year. But yeah, I would love to be able to read it for the first time without kind of knowing the little surprises here and there.
Wow.
a good
I
answer.
feel like I've heard you mention that book several times.
I love it. Everyone should read Anna Karenina.
Adding it to the
You
list.
heard it, guys. Go buy it. Go buy it.
Well, Dr. Phillips, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
We really enjoyed hearing your story, and we wish you the best of luck with the remainder of the semester.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank
Of
you.
course. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. We are done chatting for today. This podcast was recorded in the Penn State Brandywine Makerspace Media Production Studio. We Are Chattin' was made possible by Penn State Brandywine Strategic Communications and the Brandywine Launchbox. Remember to like this podcast and stream it on wherever you get your podcasts.